What you're about to hear is the kind of story that makes you put your phone down and stare at the wall. A woman buries her 3-year-old daughter alone while her sister throws a housewarming party on the exact same day. Her parents chose the party. Then all three of them expected her to forgive and keep the peace like she always had. What they didn't count on is that she was a nurse with years of connections inside the healthcare system. She'd been quietly paying attention to her sister's work for months, and she'd already started making calls. I was there for almost all of it, and I don't feel bad about a single thing that happened next. My sister moved her housewarming party to the same day as my daughter's funeral. She called it a minor event. Our parents defended her. The next time they saw me, it was already too late. I'm posting this on behalf of my best friend, Claire. She can't bring herself to write it, and honestly, I think she just doesn't want to. But I've been carrying this for 3 years now, and I feel like people need to hear what happened, what her family did to her, and what she did about it. I've known Claire since we were both in our mid-20s, met through a mutual friend at some work event in Austin. She's a nurse, the kind of person who genuinely shows up for everyone else's problems while quietly managing her own. She's not a dramatic person. She doesn't complain much. She's one of those people you could describe as steady without it sounding boring, because she's actually steady in the way that matters. When things get bad, she doesn't spiral, she just gets to work. She's also sharp in a way that kind of sneaks up on you. She doesn't announce it. She just understands situations faster than most people and files things away until she needs them. When her daughter Grace was diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma at age 2, that was exactly how she handled it. She didn't fall apart. She got organized. She got informed. She found the best specialist she could access. She learned everything there was to learn about the treatment options. And she showed up at that hospital every single day for over a year. Grace was 3 when she passed. June 9th. I remember because she called me early that morning, and I drove to the hospital without even thinking about it. And then I just sat in the parking lot for about an hour after we hung up, because I had no idea what else to do with myself. Grace was one of the sweetest kids I've ever been around. She loved strawberries more than any food on earth. She made up songs about literally everything she saw. Her shoes, the ceiling fan, whatever random object was in her eyeline. The nurses on her floor loved her. Claire had put drawings Grace made all over the outside of her hospital room door. It was hard to be in that building and not feel like something precious was happening in there that the world wasn't paying enough attention to. Now, Claire's family, her parents and her younger sister Nicole, had technically been around during Grace's illness. Loosely. Her parents lived out in Phoenix and visited twice in 6 months. Her sister Nicole, who lived about 40 minutes from Austin, came once. She stayed maybe 20 minutes and left complaining about the hospital parking fees. Claire never said a word about any of it to me. I brought it up once, gently, and she just said something like, "Everyone deals with this stuff differently," and changed the subject. That was her. She wasn't going to let herself resent her family while she was focused on Grace. She'd shelved it. I watched her shelve it. I'll be honest, I'd heard enough about Nicole over the years to have a pretty clear picture of who she was before any of this happened. Claire was the responsible one in their family. She was the one who smoothed things over, who kept the peace, who drove home from college when something needed handling. Nicole was the one who announced her own promotion at Claire's wedding reception. She was the one who showed up late to Claire's nursing school graduation dinner and spent most of it talking about a job offer she was considering. Every major moment of Claire's life, Nicole had found a way to make a portion of it about herself. Claire had always just absorbed it. That was the deal she'd accepted without ever consciously agreeing to it. Nobody in the family had ever said it out loud, but everyone understood it. The trouble started about 6 weeks before Grace died. Nicole called her with big news. She'd bought a house, 4 bedrooms, pool, the kind of place you put on social media with the hashtag #LivingMyBestLife, and she wanted to throw a housewarming party. She'd already booked caterers, a band, sent invitations to over 100 people, the whole production. The date she'd chosen was June 15th. She wanted the entire family there. Claire told her plainly that Grace was in end stage. The doctors had said early to mid-June was the window they were looking at. She might be planning a funeral that weekend. Nicole's response, "And I'm going to be as accurate as I can here, because Claire walked me through this call almost word for word, was that life goes on, she couldn't put everything on hold indefinitely, and the deposits were already paid. She suggested that Claire might actually need the distraction. She mentioned the tent rental deposit was non-refundable. Claire hung up, didn't say anything else. Grace died on June 9th, just after sunrise. Claire was holding her hand. She told me later that Grace opened her eyes one last time, smiled at her, whispered, "I love you, Mommy," and then the machine started screaming, and nurses rushed in, and everything after that was a blur. The funeral was set for June 15th, the earliest the funeral home could put everything together for a proper service. Claire called her parents that evening. Her mother's first response, the very first thing out of her mouth after the initial condolences, was to note that June 15th was the same day as Nicole's housewarming. Claire waited. She told me she genuinely waited for the part where her mother said, "Obviously we'll skip the party. Obviously we'll be there, obviously." That part didn't come. What came was, "Let me talk to your father and Nicole. We'll figure something out." What they figured out was to go to the party. Nicole called the night before the funeral. She said she couldn't change the date. Too many guests, the caterers were locked in, the tent rental was already gone, it would cost thousands to reschedule. She suggested Claire reach out to the funeral home, said that funerals were actually more flexible than most people realized, that her friend's mom had died last year, and they waited almost 3 weeks for the service. She said the funeral home could probably work something out if Claire just explained the situation to them. Claire asked her directly, "You want me to leave my daughter's body in refrigeration at the funeral home so you don't have to reschedule your party?" Nicole said she was being dramatic. Claire's dad called the next morning. He had the same talking points. "Nicole has worked so hard for this house. The tickets are already purchased. We can't physically be in 2 places at once. Grace wouldn't want everyone to put their lives on hold for her." He genuinely threw golf tournaments into the argument. Him and his golf tournaments. Her mom's book club. Both of them, like those were things that needed to be weighed against their granddaughter's funeral. Claire told him not to come. Told him to go enjoy the party. Hung up. I was there on June 15th. Julia, Claire's closest friend from the hospital, the charge nurse in the pediatric ICU, was there. Grace's dad, David, flew in from Seattle, which I'll give him credit for. A small handful of Claire's co-workers showed up. Grace's preschool teacher cried through the entire service and didn't even try to hold it together. That was it. Maybe 15 people total in a cemetery on a warm June afternoon, standing around a casket that was incomprehensibly small. The kind of small that makes your chest do something you don't have words for. Claire stood at that tiny white casket and delivered the eulogy she'd written at 3 in the morning, with hands that were shaking so badly the paper was audibly rattling. She talked about Grace's laugh, the strawberry obsession, the made-up songs, the way she used to hold up whatever she was looking at, a rock, a spoon, her own sock, and describe it like she was giving a presentation. Her bravery through treatments that would make most adults quit. She didn't mention her family. Not once. She didn't have to. That evening, she went home and pulled up Nicole's social media. The housewarming photos were already everywhere. String lights over the pool. Tables loaded with food. People laughing and dancing on the lawn. Claire's parents were in multiple shots. Her dad with his arm around Nicole, both of them grinning big. Her mom and Nicole in a close hug, both of them teary-eyed with happiness. One caption, "So grateful to have my amazing mom here for the biggest day of my life. Nothing is better than family." Her dad had commented underneath, "So proud of my successful daughter. You've earned every bit of this happiness." That post was time-stamped 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right when Claire had been standing at Grace's graveside. She closed the laptop before she did something she'd regret. Then she sat on the floor of Grace's bedroom for a long time. Could have been an hour, could have been 3. She told me she genuinely had no idea. Surrounded by the toys and the drawings and the little strawberry-themed stuffed animal that Grace had slept with every night in the hospital. There was still a half-eaten pack of strawberry crackers on the nightstand that she hadn't been able to throw away yet. She didn't cry that night. She told me she'd gone past crying somewhere around the 4th hour of sitting there. She just got quiet and made a decision. Hold on, let me step in here because I need you to understand the full picture. For the listeners, this is me, not Claire talking. Nicole knew Grace was dying. She'd visited once in 6 months and left early over a parking fee. Then she told her grieving sister the funeral was more flexible than you think. That's not oblivious. That's Princess Housewarming deciding her pool party and granite countertops outranked a 3-year-old in a white casket. And the parents, who hadn't managed more than 2 visits while their granddaughter was dying, chose the catering. Just so we're all clear on exactly who these people are before the next part, Claire blocked all 3 of them and didn't respond to anyone for over a week. Her mother eventually got through on a different line. The conversation went exactly how you'd expect. Her mother called it a disagreement about scheduling. She said Nicole had felt overshadowed. She said Claire had always had a flair for drama, even as a kid, always making things into a bigger deal than they needed to be. She said the family needed to heal together. Claire said don't call this number again. Then she blocked it too. What she did next, I found out in pieces over the following few weeks. She'd call me or we'd grab coffee and she'd fill me in. She was different after the funeral. Quieter, but not in a falling apart way. More like someone who'd made a decision and was in the middle of executing it. I noticed she had a legal pad with a lot of writing on it when we met at her place once. She closed it when I sat down and didn't bring it up. See, Nicole wasn't just a successful pharmaceutical sales rep. She was her company's top performer 3 years running, pulling in bonuses that made Claire's nursing salary look like a rounding error. She drove a luxury car, wore the designer clothes, maintained the image aggressively and publicly, and she had just bought an $800,000 house. All of it, it turned out, was built on fraud. Months earlier, during one of Grace's hospital stays, sometime around February, Claire thought, or maybe January. Actually, she said she could never remember exactly which stay. She had overheard 2 doctors in the hallway talking about a pharmaceutical sales rep who'd been pressuring them to prescribe higher doses of a pain medication than the clinical guidelines recommended. They mentioned the rep by name. Nicole. Claire had filed it away at the time as something she couldn't deal with while her kid was dying. Her sister was aggressive in how she sold, sure, but criminal? She'd given her the benefit of the doubt. After the funeral, she was done giving anyone anything. She spent the next 3 weeks quietly pulling on threads. No confrontations, nothing that would raise a flag. She had years of relationships built up inside the healthcare system, and she knew how to ask questions in a way that didn't look like anything. She called people she trusted, doctors she'd worked alongside, administrators she'd built rapport with over years of shifts, people who knew the system the way she did. She framed everything as casual curiosity, professional concern, routine follow-up. Nobody thought twice about it. What she found was worse than she'd expected. Nicole had been offering kickbacks to doctors, disguised as consulting fees and speaking honorariums. She'd been falsifying her prescription data to hit her sales quotas. And most damning, she'd been pushing off-label use of a pain medication that had serious documented cardiac side effects, a practice that Claire could tie to at least 2 patient deaths through the hospital records. The thing that really got Claire, she told me, was how stupid Nicole had been about documenting all of it herself. She'd complained about stupid rules in emails from her personal account, joked about doctors being easy money in texts, the kind of trail that you'd think a person would know not to leave. Actually, back up, I should mention that Claire also found a recorded phone call where Nicole pushed a physician to prescribe double the recommended dose to a patient who had already flagged cardiac concerns. That one was the worst of it. That one is what made everything that followed feel, at least to me, a lot less like revenge and a lot more like something that needed to happen regardless. Pause for a second. This is still me, not Claire. She spent the weeks after her daughter's funeral quietly building a federal case against her sister, while still grieving, while still going into every shift at the clinic. Most people in that position aren't functional at all. They're barely moving through the day. Claire was cross-referencing medical records and documenting kickback schemes. That's not emotion. That's someone with actual ice water in their veins who finally had a reason to go looking. Princess Housewarming handed the one person who knew the healthcare system inside out the exact motivation she needed. Whatever's coming next, Nicole put it in motion herself. Claire compiled everything into a detailed report and then reached out to a journalist named Trevor, who'd been covering pharmaceutical fraud for years. They'd met briefly a couple years back when he was doing a healthcare costs piece and had interviewed people at her clinic. She reached out, they met at a coffee shop downtown one Wednesday morning. She was eating a plain bagel. She mentioned this to me later like that random detail had stuck with her for some reason. And she laid everything out on the table. Trevor went through the documents slowly. said it was substantial. Asked how she'd gotten all of it. She said she was a nurse and she paid attention. He asked whether she understood that this would likely mean criminal charges, that it would probably end her sister's career entirely. She told him what Nicole had called Grace's funeral, a minor event she could work around if necessary. Those exact words. Trevor said he'd verify everything independently and run the story if it checked out. Said it might take a few weeks. That was all she asked. 2.5 weeks later, he called. He'd confirmed everything. The pharmaceutical board had been notified and had already opened an investigation. Federal prosecutors were looking at the case. He told her the story was publishing tomorrow, and her sister was about to have a very bad day. Claire drove to the cemetery after she hung up. Sat by Grace's headstone for a while. Told her the first domino was down. The article published on a Thursday morning. Front page on the Austin Chronicle online edition. Top pharmaceutical sales rep accused of fraud, kickbacks, and endangering patients. Nicole's name was right there in the first paragraph. Her photo, pulled from her own social media profiles, the same ones she'd been posting party photos on, ran alongside it. By noon, Nicole had deleted every account she had. By afternoon, news vans were sitting in front of the housewarming house. By evening, her company had issued a statement announcing her immediate termination and full cooperation with all ongoing investigations. One of the fastest corporate separations I've ever heard of, honestly. Okay, stop. Take a breath. She went from standing at her daughter's grave to watching news vans park outside her sister's dream house in under 6 weeks. The fraud was real. Trevor independently verified every piece of it. The patient harm was real. The victims existed long before Claire made a single call. She didn't invent anything. But the timing, the precision, pulling it all together in the middle of the worst grief most people ever experience, that's not luck or coincidence. That's someone who decided to be 3 moves ahead of everyone who assumed she'd just absorb it. Nicole threw a housewarming party. Claire threw a federal investigation back. Claire wasn't done. Her parents had spent a lifetime enabling Nicole, and she felt like they hadn't escaped what they'd done either. Her father was a retired accountant, proud of managing his own investment portfolio, proud of the returns he generated. He used the same password for everything. She'd watched him log into accounts over the years, and it was always the same combination, never changed it once. She wasn't going to steal from him. She wasn't going to do anything criminal. But she could create a significant amount of chaos in his financial life without touching a cent of his money. She set up a few email addresses that looked like they could be from legitimate financial institutions and started sending him urgent-looking correspondence. Suspicious activity on his accounts, required documentation for investments that didn't exist, security updates needed immediately. She knew her father. He'd panic. He'd call his brokerage at odd hours demanding answers to questions about problems that weren't actually there. He'd move money around, freeze accounts, make impulsive decisions. He'd create the chaos himself. Within a week, he was calling Nicole in full meltdown. Nicole posted about it on social media. My dad thinks his accounts are compromised, spent 2 hours on the phone with him. Why are old people so bad with technology? That post stayed up for 3 days before everything else came crashing down and she deleted all her accounts. Anyway, a month after the article ran, federal prosecutors filed formal charges. Healthcare fraud, kickbacks, conspiracy to defraud. Each count carrying real prison time. Nicole tried to reach Claire every way she could think of, showing up at her apartment, calling from unknown numbers, getting people to pass messages. Claire had the locks changed and put up a camera. When Nicole appeared on the doorstep one evening, crying, Claire watched her on the camera feed from inside and didn't move toward the door. Nicole sobbed into the intercom that this was too much, that one bad decision shouldn't cost her everything, that Claire was destroying her. Claire pressed the intercom button and said one thing. You called Grace's funeral a minor event. Then she let go of the button. Her parents reached her through the clinic, called during working hours, and told the receptionist it was a family emergency. Claire took the call in the break room, back against the wall, watching the door. Her mother opened with, "What you did to your sister is unforgivable." Said it was all over a party, that Claire was being vindictive, that Nicole had feelings too, and had felt like Claire was somehow trying to overshadow her big day with the funeral timing. Her father got on the line and said that Nicole had worked hard for everything she had, that she'd built herself up from nothing, and that the family owed it to her to be there. Claire said she was done and hung up, but she had one more move. She contacted several news outlets with a follow-up angle on the story. She sent them photos from the housewarming, her parents laughing arm in arm with Nicole, celebrating big. She gave them the timestamps on every photo. She gave them the date of Grace's funeral. The follow-up articles were brutal. Family celebrated house built on fraud while grandchild was being buried. The story spread far past Austin. Her parents' retirement community received complaints from neighbors. The public was not gentle with their opinions. Strangers found their contact information. Her father had to stop answering the phone. Wait. I know some of you are already typing "she went too far" in the comments. And look, I wrestled with that too. But here's what I keep landing on. These are people who visited their dying granddaughter twice in 6 months. Who received a funeral date and called it inconvenient. Who let Nicole describe the whole situation as a minor scheduling conflict and said nothing. They made every choice with full information in front of them. Claire just made sure the rest of the world got to see the same information they'd been sitting on. That's not cruelty. That's a receipt for choices they already made. Nicole took a plea deal. 5 years in federal prison, restitution to the victims, permanent ban from working in pharmaceuticals or healthcare of any kind. The sentencing hearing was public. Claire went and sat in the back of the courtroom. She didn't tell me she was going until after. She said she needed to see it close out in person, needed to watch the door close on it for real. Nicole saw her across the room the moment she walked in. Before the judge issued the sentence, Nicole was given the chance to speak. The designer clothes were long gone, plain gray suit, hair pulled back simple, no jewelry, nothing. She looked smaller than Claire had expected. She said she took responsibility for her actions. Said she'd made terrible choices, hurt people, violated the trust of patients and physicians. Said she deserved to be punished. Then she looked directly at Claire and told the court that her own sister had orchestrated her downfall. Not out of concern for patient safety, she said. Not out of any real moral principle. Out of personal revenge over a family disagreement. She said Claire had used the legal system as a weapon. The prosecutor objected. The judge sustained it. But Nicole had said the part she wanted to say. The judge sentenced her to the agreed 5 years. As she was let out, Nicole looked back one last time. Claire held her gaze, face completely still, until Nicole turned away first. Her parents made one final attempt after that. They drove from Oklahoma, showed up at the clinic lobby, told security it was a family emergency. Claire came down. She said when she walked out of the elevator and saw them standing there, her first thought was just how much smaller they looked than she remembered. Her father had lost weight, face gray, looked about 10 years older than the last time she'd seen him. Her mother's hands were shaking badly, and she'd aged in the way people do when the stress has been going on for a long time, not just weeks. They'd sold their retirement condo at a loss to cover Nicole's legal fees, declared bankruptcy. Were moving to a smaller place near a relative in Oklahoma. Claire said she stood about 6 feet away from them and didn't move any closer. Her dad said they just wanted to know if there was a path forward, if they were still a family somewhere underneath all of this. Claire looked at both of them for a long moment. Then she said, "There's no family here. You ended it when you chose a party over a funeral. When you made me bury my daughter alone." Her mother said they'd lost everything. Their savings, their home, their daughter in prison, their reputation gone. Wasn't that enough? Hadn't they been punished enough? Claire said, "I lost my daughter, my 3-year-old who loved strawberries and made up songs about everything she saw. She died asking me if we could go to the park when she felt better. I lost everything that actually mattered. You couldn't even show up for the funeral." She walked away. Security walked her parents out. She never saw them again. About 2 months after that, she got a call from her Aunt Lydia, her father's sister, someone she hadn't spoken to in over a year. Her father had suffered a serious heart attack. He was in intensive care. Lydia said her mother was afraid to contact Claire directly and had asked her to pass the message along. She said he might not make it. She asked if Claire wanted to come. Claire said no, didn't pause on it, didn't explain it further. Just no. Lydia pushed back gently, said she'd heard about the funeral, about everything, that what her parents had done was wrong, that she understood. but that he was dying and didn't Claire want to say goodbye? Claire said, "He said goodbye to me when he chose a party over his granddaughter's funeral." There's nothing left to say. Her father didn't die. He recovered enough to leave the hospital eventually, though his health stayed fragile. Claire found out through a mutual acquaintance, not through family contact. She said she felt nothing when she heard it. Not relief, not regret. Just nothing. Final update. About 6 months after Nicole went in, Claire received a letter from her, forwarded through the prison, already screened by the time it arrived. She almost didn't open it. She told me she held it over the trash can for a good 30 seconds before curiosity won. The handwriting was messy, not like Nicole's usual perfect script. She said she wasn't asking for forgiveness. Said she probably didn't deserve it and knew that. But she said Claire had gone beyond what was just. That she'd orchestrated a complete destruction, ruined their parents financially, turned the entire world against them, used legitimate crimes as the vehicle for something personal. She said she hoped the pain had filled the hole Grace left. She said she didn't think it would, that she thought Claire would always be empty no matter what she did. She also said she had loved Grace, that she'd been a terrible aunt, she knew it, but that she'd loved her, that Grace would be sad to see what Claire had become. Claire read the letter twice. Then she burned it in her kitchen sink and washed the ashes down the drain. She had cease and desist letters sent to all 3 of them through a lawyer not long after. No contact through any means, direct or through intermediaries, for any reason whatsoever. Violation would result in immediate legal action. That was the final door. Closed and locked. What she did next is the part I think about the most, honestly. She started volunteering with a pediatric cancer support organization, working with families in the middle of what she had been in the middle of. Helping parents figure out what the medical jargon actually meant, work through hospital systems that felt impossible from the inside, find resources they didn't know existed. It was hard work for her. Every kid she met was a reminder of Grace. Every desperate parent she sat with reflected something she recognized from her own worst months. There were days she'd come home from a volunteer shift and call me, and we'd just sit on the phone for a while without saying much. But she didn't stop going. She told me once that it was the first thing that felt like it meant something real after everything else. Not healing, she said. She was careful not to call it that. Just meaningful in a way that the revenge never actually was, even when the revenge was working exactly as planned. I watched her sit with a young mother one evening, maybe 25, her son in end-stage leukemia. The woman asked her how you survive watching your child die. Claire said, "You just do it, one moment at a time. You're there. You hold his hand. You tell him you love him. You make every second count." The woman asked, "What comes after? How do you survive it?" Claire was quiet for a second. Then she said, "You survive by choosing to. Every day you wake up and choose to keep going. Some days that's genuinely all you can do. Other days you can do more. But it starts with the choice." She still has Grace's drawings on her refrigerator. All of them. Same ones. Nicole served 3 years before parole. Claire found out through a news alert she'd set up. She didn't contact her, didn't attend the release. As far as she's concerned, Nicole is a stranger, connected to her by DNA and by a history she's done carrying. Her parents are still out in Oklahoma somewhere. Her father's health stayed fragile after his heart issues. She doesn't ask around for updates anymore. None of it is her business now. She visits Grace's grave every June 9th, always brings strawberries. She told me that on the 2nd anniversary, she sat out there for almost 3 hours just talking out loud to the headstone, telling Grace about everything that had happened, what she'd done, what it cost, what it felt like. She said she told her she was sorry if she'd become someone Grace would have been sad to see, but that she wasn't sure she'd had a better choice available, that she'd needed something to hold on to, and making them understand had been the only thing she could hold on to for a long time. She told me once, maybe 2 years after everything settled, that she doesn't regret it, that they deserved exactly what happened. But, she said, and there was a but, she said the revenge didn't fill anything. It gave her something to focus on when the grief would have swallowed her whole. It was a direction when she had nothing else. But once it was done, the grief was still there, just different, quieter, a different shape than before, not gone. I think about those party photo timestamps more than I probably should. 2 p.m., June 15th. Nothing is better than family. I don't know what it says about me that I still can't look at that caption without feeling something shift in my chest. But I know exactly what it says about them. What Claire did wasn't crazy. It wasn't vindictive. Not really. It was the only language they'd ever shown any sign of understanding. Look, I'm not going to tell you whether she went too far. That's not a clean answer, and I won't pretend it is. What I'll say, her sister built an $800,000 house on fraud that got real people killed. Her parents watched their granddaughter die from a distance, then posted, "Nothing is better than family next to a pool." They expected forgiveness. They got consequences. And if you've ever been the person in your family that everyone assumes will just absorb it and move on, you already know exactly why she didn't. Drop your take in the comments. I want to hear where you land. And if you're not subscribed, hit that button so you don't miss what's next.